A man can spend decades building money, a career, and respect, and still find out too late that he was neglecting what really mattered. There are 5 lessons that a lot of grandfathers learned the hard way. Lessons every man should understand before life forces him to learn them. The first one starts right where almost every man thinks he's got it all figured out. Family. Topic 1. Don't sacrifice your family while trying to build your future. There's a trap a lot of men fall into without even realizing it, believing they're working so hard for the family that they don't notice they're drifting away from it. He wakes up early, works late, takes on overtime, chases that promotion, and tells himself it's all love wearing the disguise of responsibility. And in a way, it is. The problem starts when a man starts believing that providing financially is the same thing as being present. Money pays the bills, but it doesn't show up to your kid's first game, doesn't listen to a hard conversation, and doesn't create those little memories that seem meaningless until they're gone for good. A grandfather who's been around the block would probably tell you something a busy man doesn't always want to hear. If he keeps putting off family life, one day he might have enough money to buy almost anything, except the time he lost. A 6-year-old isn't going to stay 6 forever while dad builds his career. A teenage daughter isn't going to wait around forever for that dinner that got canceled for the 3rd time. That's why a wise man learns to separate what's actually urgent from what just feels urgent. Sometimes turning the phone off at dinner, setting aside one night a week for the family, or just asking your kid how their day went, is worth more than another hour in front of the computer. And here's the irony in all of it. A lot of men work so hard to give their kids a better life that they end up robbing them of the very thing they'll remember most. A nicer car, a bigger house, a fatter bank account. Those can all be great achievements, but none of them replace a dad who showed up when it counted. That doesn't mean giving up on ambition, quitting your job, or ditching your future. It means understanding that the future is also built in the small hours you decide not to sell to work. And once a man finally gets that, he starts to see there's something else he can't keep treating like it's an endless supply either. Topic 2. Take care of your body before it forces you to. A young man tends to believe his body will forgive just about anything. A few bad nights of sleep, fast food on the way to work, barely any exercise, and that classic promise of, "I'll start Monday," all seem harmless when he's still got energy to burn. But the body doesn't forget. It just takes its sweet time sending the bill. A grandfather who's watched decades go by would probably say, health isn't something you start valuing once it's gone. Same way you don't wait for the storm to hit to find out if the roof holds up. The strength you have today needs protecting while it still feels like a given. And taking care of your body doesn't mean living like a pro athlete or grinding 2 hours a day at the gym. A man can start with the basics, walking regularly, lifting weights a few times a week, sleeping better, cutting back on booze, and eating a little more mindfully. It can be as simple as swapping out a processed meal for eggs, veggies, rice, beans, or a solid source of protein, or just taking a 30-minute walk instead of sitting the whole time. The goal isn't chasing a perfect body, it's holding on to your independence. Because there's a huge difference between just getting older and actually hitting 70, still able to carry your own bags, play with the grandkids, and climb a set of stairs without leaning on someone else. Maybe that's one of the smartest forms of wealth a man can build. A body that lets him actually enjoy everything he spent his whole life working toward. I mean, what's the point of saving up to travel if you can't even walk around the cities you always dreamed of seeing? What's the point of building a beautiful house if you don't have the energy to enjoy the backyard with your kids? A wise man understands every workout, every good night's sleep, and every decent food choice is a small deposit into an account he'll probably need a lot more of later. But there's an even trickier account to predict, because it depends on the people he chooses to share his life with. If this content is making you look at some of your own choices a little differently, subscribe to the channel to keep following these conversations about manhood, experience, and the lessons that really matter as the years go by. We're working toward hitting 1,000 subscribers, and subscribing directly helps the channel keep growing and bringing you more content like this. Topic 3. The people you choose can change the entire course of your life. A man can choose his career, the city he lives in, even the car he drives. But a lot of the time, he doesn't realize just how much the people around him are choosing his future right along with him. Friends, a wife, business partners, even close co-workers shape his habits, his confidence, and what he ends up considering normal. A grandfather who's been through it all would probably tell you, pay close attention to who's sitting at your table, because over time, you start thinking, spending, talking, and living like the people you spend the most time with. It's not about finding perfect people. It's about not spending an entire life next to people who keep pulling you away from the man you're trying to become. This gets especially important in relationships. Choosing a partner shouldn't just be about attraction, chemistry, or emotion, because a good decision can bring you decades of peace, while a bad one can turn years into nothing but conflict. Same goes for friendships and business. A friend who pushes discipline can help you grow, while someone who normalizes irresponsibility can make bad decisions feel totally fine. A man can start by noticing something simple. After spending a few hours with a certain person, does he feel more focused, respected, and motivated, or more irritated, insecure, and impulsive? Sometimes that feeling tells you more than any long list of qualities ever could. And here's an uncomfortable truth. Some people are meant to stay in your memories, not in your daily life. That doesn't mean bailing on someone the first time things get hard, or treating relationships like disposable contracts. It means recognizing when a relationship is tearing down what you spent years trying to build. A healthy circle doesn't need to agree with everything you do, but it should be able to tell you the truth when you're wrong, celebrate with you when you win, and stick around when life gets rough. Because once you've sorted out family, friends, and partners, an even harder question shows up. How much of his own life is he actually living? And how much is he just putting off for a future that might never come? Topic 4. Stop waiting for someday to start living. There's a word that can quietly rob a man of decades without making a sound. Someday. Someday he'll travel more, spend more time with the kids, learn that instrument, visit that place he's always wanted to see, or just rest without feeling guilty about it. The problem is someday never actually shows up on the calendar. The guy keeps telling himself he'll get to it once he makes more money, once he lands that promotion, once he finally has fewer responsibilities. And while he's waiting for life to become perfect, the years keep rolling by without asking his permission. A grandfather who's already lived through this whole movie would probably say there's no such thing as the perfect moment to start living. That doesn't mean ditching your responsibilities or acting like the future doesn't matter. It means you stop turning the present into a permanent sacrifice. A man can keep building his career and at the same time take his wife out to dinner on a random Tuesday, teach his son to fish on Saturday, or finally book that trip he's been putting off for 5 years. Little decisions like that seem ordinary in the moment, but they can turn into some of the most valuable memories of an entire life. At the end of the day, nobody looks back wishing they'd spent more nights answering emails instead of being with the people they loved. And maybe the most dangerous part is that putting things off usually feels like responsibility. The guy tells himself he's being disciplined, that he's thinking about the future, that it's just not the right time yet. But discipline shouldn't mean completely abandoning the present. It should mean building a future without wasting the road that gets you there. Here's a good gut check. If the next 10 years looked exactly like the last 10, would he be happy with the life he built? If that answer stings a little, that's probably exactly where something needs to change. Because in the end, money, family, health, and time all point toward one question no man can dodge forever. Topic 5. Become a man you'll be proud to remember. At the end of the day, a man probably won't measure his worth by the size of his house, the title he held, or the number sitting in his bank account. Those things can matter, sure, but there's a much harder question lurking underneath. Do I respect the man I became? A grandfather who's lived through decades has already watched money come and go, jobs end, and people change paths. What sticks around is the character he built when nobody was watching, the word he kept even when breaking it would have been easier. and the way he treated people who had nothing to offer him in return. Being a man he can be proud of doesn't mean never messing up. Honestly, strong men do mess up. They own the mistake and find the guts to fix it. It means holding on to your principles when nobody's clapping, taking responsibility instead of pointing fingers, and doing what needs to be done even when it's not comfortable. A man can start small, follow through on what he promises, say sorry when he's wrong, take care of his parents while he still can, teach his kids something real and never trade his values for a quick win. These are small moves, but they're exactly the kind of small decisions that, repeated over decades, end up building an entire life. And maybe that's the real legacy a man leaves behind. Not just the money his kids inherit, but the stories they tell about him. Not just what he built, but what he taught, without ever needing to give a speech. When a man can look back and know he protected the people he loved, took care of his health, chose good people, made the most of his time, and stayed true to his principles, he's built something no amount of money can buy. So the question isn't really about what older men learned too late anymore. It's about what a man can still change today, while he still has the time to change it. Conclusion. Maybe the biggest lesson of all is realizing a man doesn't have to wait until he's 70 to start thinking like someone who's 70. He can look at his own life right now and ask himself, am I giving my family enough attention? Am I taking care of the body I'll have to carry around for the next 30 years? Are the people around me helping build the man I want to become, or tearing him down? And most importantly, am I actually living, or just waiting on the next someday? Because time doesn't give you a heads up when it's running out, it just keeps on going. So if he could get one piece of advice from a grandfather today, which of these 5 lessons would he need to hear most? Which one hit closest to a decision he's been putting off? Is there something he already knows he needs to change, but keeps telling himself he'll deal with later? The truth is, changing your life rarely starts with some giant dramatic decision. A lot of the time it starts with calling someone you love, making a healthier choice, having a hard conversation, taking one night off from work, or just having the guts to admit a certain path isn't working anymore. The man he'll be 20 or 30 years from now is being built by the small decisions he makes today. He can still choose to be present, take care of his health, surround himself with better people, make the most of his time, and build a character he can be proud of. The question is, when he looks back, will he feel proud of the man he became, or will he wish he'd paid attention while there was still time? If this content sparked something for you, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more content about the choices, challenges, and lessons that help a man build a life that's actually worth living.